On his first full day in office, President Obama committed his administration to new transparency. He wrote and signed this memo on the Freedom of Information Act, which allows government documents to be released for the public. A democracy requires accountability, and accountability requires transparency. Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. But just yesterday, the president decided to block the release of photos that document abuse of prisoners in Iraq and Afghanistan, just days after he said he would not block them. Folks, is this a flip-flop? I think it is. Joining me now is Jonathan Turley, professor of constitutional law at George Washington University Law School. Mr. Turley, great to have you with us. I think we're on opposite sides of this. I'm going to give the president some room here. Why do they have to be released right now?
Well, one of the reasons, Ed, is it's the law. That is, the Second Circuit looked at this in a very good opinion. It's actually on my blog if people want to read it. It goes through and explains that you cannot withhold documents under the Freedom of Information Act simply because it will embarrass you or the country. Imagine if that was the standard. Obviously, George Bush constantly withheld things. So did Dick Cheney, saying that they would embarrass the country, that if you embarrass the administration, you embarrass the military, it's a national security problem. There's no limitations to that rationale. But it's against the law. And what the Second Circuit said was correct. They were unanimous on that point. And what the president is doing now is to say simply that it's just not convenient. It's going to be too difficult for us. And it could be used as a recruiting device. What I would suggest, Ed, is that the best recruiting device against our country is to show we're a nation of hypocrites, that we don't follow the federal law or international law when it's inconvenient. And that's what's happening here. That's why they reversed their position.
So the president, gosh, as an Obama supporter, Jonathan, it hurts me to hear Bush and Obama in the same sentence, but I guess that's where we are on this issue. That one kind of hurts. Well, but is he not just listening to the generals and thinking that in the bigger picture, this information or these pictures will come out later?
Well, you know, George Bush always said that he was listening to the generals and that he did this because it's in all of our best interests, when it's usually simply because it'd be politically difficult. But there would be no limitation. If Barack Obama actually wins in front of the Supreme Court, that's his Hail Mary play, it would be a terrible, terrible change in the law, that it would allow future administrations to say, if it's embarrassing to us, it's embarrassing to the nation. If it's embarrassing to the nation, it's a national security concern. But the other thing, Ed, is that, you know, by withholding this information, and I think this is what the Second Circuit was talking about, by withholding the information, you make this much worse. That is, what we need to do to defeat our enemies is to say that we're changing our policies, that we're not hiding from responsibility, and we're not hiding our sins. And by the way, I think that these aren't just redundant pictures. They may show that our abuse of detainees was much broader. It was not these Abu Ghraib defendants, that there was a culture.
Well, the president, being a constitutional lawyer himself, I'm going to cut him some slack on this. Listening to the generals, I think they're going to get released at one time or another. But I have to believe, Mr. Turley, that this trip overseas coming up might have had something to do with it. What about that?
Well, regardless of the trip overseas, you know, if you say that you believe in the principle and the rules of law, and we are a nation of laws, then you have to comply with them even when they're inconvenient, even when they're embarrassing. And what President Obama is doing here by reversing what his administration first told this court is simply saying it's not the right time for us to comply with the law. Well, that makes this administration sort of Bush version 2.0. It is simply a ramped up version of exactly what George Bush argued. And by the way, in his press conference, all the arguments he made in the press conference were expressly rejected by the court.
Okay. Well, I think the president is getting a lot of pressure on this. He'll probably make another statement on it. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Next up on the Ed